No way, really? Yeah, I know you do. I mean, I'm such a big fan of VR, and it's like, I'm reading this fascinating book right now. I mean, it's taking the basically about this guy who was the CMO for American Apparel. The CMO of American Apparel for many years. They're like, and basically it's like manipulated, which is like you get one, you say get ABJ, and then you go over to like a tech this guy's running out. I need to be a super fit too. And then it's just like everyone drinks and you get all the time.
And then there's a trucker side who's just kind of like, do you want to know that I dropped you? I don't know if it's like a tax or what, which is something you do want to actually shift away from. Actually making decisions on that.
Really? That's awesome. They reached out to you.
Right now, they're working on some lines at all.
Okay. No, but I mean, I love sales, but like marketing is so different, and like so much great stuff to do. Because like all these they're doing an ABJ, they've got to put out 20 articles a day, more than that, and they're always looking for need something interesting. They're always looking for we provide it. It's really fun. I just started doing it too. Like reach out to you comment on some posts, ask a question. There's a really cool. There's something called Payroll.
We had the alpha
You should look into it. It's really good. And essentially what it is it's like reporters can put in a request and they send out emails selling on today. And then, so like, there's really you can get things related to your company, say something about AI. Yeah. So really, and like you get free press and then, then you can mention, you put, some so you get your name out there.
We have to have a product to be able to sell.
So maybe put on your site, hey,
we bring one guy on early to kind of help us make the marketing strategy.
And I started
There's some other good stuff coming up. I guess, so we haven't finalized where our tech headquarters is. So that's an interesting consider fast. For sales, there's a couple of things in Chicago. Everything's around this one. I can't really tell you
you gotta be willing to consider back the ride.
Looking for which helps out a lot.
Description areas. He's a great guy.
Software. So I'll have to see how I can adapt.
Some crazy stuff.
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, I love even that, but it's like 55 or 50% of all college grads get some kind of role tips. And even the natural, it's not something that requires any kind of degree.
That's good stock.
I mean, I guess you can get into it, but how long you stay is a different question, right?
Right, yeah.
Call it like a map.
Yeah.
It makes them feel like
Nice.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Can you write on it?
I think so.
Sales degrees.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Everyone, please help yourself to pizza.
Right out of school.
I ate 27.
I think it's easy to find it.
We get more mature.
Very good, actually. We'll talk afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. So
It's good. I'm sure I've got like some really great deals. same time I'm ready.
Yeah,
We can go out.
we're really unique.
I already told you the deal, man.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that was and that's an interesting opportunity. I have some ideas too.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I just want to find out.
Yeah, no, yeah, go some pizza.
It could, that's very distinct possibility. In California, yeah, it was, absolutely. It's great. I mean, they're doing so, yeah, they're doing quarterly meetings, and they serve them well. They don't do very well, so they do a quarterly meeting, so, yeah. I think one thing is, ambitious. I think that, Sure.
Experiential media for education.
I mean, I don't know. I enjoy it.
Augmented reality is around.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like, I don't know.
Yes, and it's very much so. Very much so.
Why
What
do
it
you
is, why they want it, why they need it.
So,
Here to, yeah. Tricks of the trade. Pokemon Go is still but
What was the last one? Yeah, so are you looking to get more involved? great people on sale. It's just on the product. I got one product.
Right, that's why it's like filmmaker, but it's very
Inside sale.
Cool part of it.
Sale. Okay. Inside. Why inside? What's a key Yeah, I know that problem. Any ideas?
Visualization. I find that people are like, you can actually get things
This is third, I go to third phase. So I started off in Fortune 500. Actually did the stick bar, the anticipated outside permanent sales while doing I dove in, got the whole startup thing a while. Switched helped build a commercial business in January research. Kind of telegraphed a media company. Left that, and then went to a startup in Kansas City. We moved that in 5 years from like $1 million in revenue to like 50 million net new sales a year, and the second largest commercial seller business in the US. We just left there 3 months ago and came to Build Fest. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back at home.
I'm in telematics software. I'm not traveling.
Hi Tom. I just wanted to give you a heads up. We'll be going in about just 1 minute.
Started on the inside sales team. Our goal is to start the funding.
Hi everyone. Welcome everyone. We'll get going. Just please get settled and help yourself to some pizza. We'll get going in about 30 seconds or so. Let me just get our virtual guest online. Hey Tom.
Yes,
Hey Tom, how are you?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yes, hear you well. I just want to give you a heads up. We're just about to get started, so thank you so much for being with us again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Hello, everyone.
Hey, Tom.
Hello. So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out, for being at our meetup this evening. I really appreciate it. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces, see a lot of new faces as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time, because I know, and I say this for every sales meeting, time, sales professionals, sales leaders, time is our most valuable, most important asset. And we all got 86,400 seconds in a day to be as hopefully as successful, as productive as possible. And I value you taking, I'm terrible at math, but 90 minutes, that translates into seconds, 5,400 seconds. So hopefully we can make that as valuable as possible, and you can leave here hopefully with some new connections, some key takeaways from our guest speaker, Tom, and hopefully be able to look forward to seeing you at future meetups. My name is Gary Smith. I'm volunteered to be president of the AISP chapter here in Austin. Volunteered for just over a year or so. I thought we'd get started. I wanted to ask a question, hopefully get your feedback. I love stats and research, anything to do with sales. So I came up this afternoon with a number, 31%. And I was curious if anyone wanted to hazard a guess at what 31% might allude to. I'll give you, I guess, a couple of clues because it's very general. It's sales related, related to sales quota.
Number that hit their quota?
Almost, yeah.
Optimum quota.
Judo was so close. It was actually a CSO Insights, a third-party research company that focused on the sales industry, They did their recent 2016 sales effectiveness survey, and one of the stats, when they surveyed several hundred large, mid-sized, small organizations, they found that on average 31% of companies actually hit or exceeded their revenue quota on an annual basis. So depending on everyone's backgrounds, that could be a lot, or it could be, gosh, that's really low. So I thought it would be a good segue into our presentation this evening. We're going to talk about how to deliver effective sales presentations, because just in my own background, experiences, and current experience, working with a lot of sales organizations, a lot of pipeline is a lot of the times really full, but often pipeline gets stuck or stalled at the presentation phase or discovery phase, and often deals slip or opportunities get lost or fall to the wayside. So hopefully we can give you some tips, and we can raise this 31% maybe to 31.5 or 32 over the next year. So you were so close, Judah. I'll give you a
Oh, nice.
I'll give you a book. But thank you again for everyone. I want to just go through our agenda for this evening. As you can see, it's jam-packed. So in the next couple minutes, because there's so many new folks new to the AISP, I'll give you a quick overview of the organization, the resources that are available, and also some upcoming meetings that you're able to participate in. Then we'll welcome our guest speaker, Tom Drews. He's going to focus on delivering effective virtual sales presentations. So definitely really excited to hear from Tom. And then we'll wrap up around 7:10-ish, 15-ish with some networking, and I'm sure there'll be lots of pizza left. So please enjoy. So for those folks that are maybe new to the AISP, I just wanted to give you a quick overview, and I promise I'll only spend a couple minutes. And I'm excited because we've got folks that have relocated to Austin, folks that are Austin natives, and folks that have traveled from outside of the US to be with us this evening. So thank you so much. So the AISP is actually a global organization. So it's the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. So an organization dedicated to growing the inside sales or digital sales profession, really enabling folks like ourselves, sales professionals, sales leaders, to elevate performance, raise the benchmark with our sales professionally as well as within our organizations. There's 66 chapters across the globe, about 11,000 members, should be around 13,000 by end of year. So definitely a huge wealth of experience that you can pull from and get to connect with. If we go to the next slide, some of the resources that are available. And also, I guess, before we get there, the AISP chapter here in Austin, really my goal, I volunteered to lead the chapter just over a year ago. I just love selling. I love closing deals, I love finding deals, I love helping folks, coaching sales organizations. And my goal for us getting together is hopefully, I think we're the best people to learn from. We not only get feedback from our customers on a daily basis, but ourselves, I think we talk with customers, we have successes, we have challenges, so I think this is a great opportunity to hopefully share those and really raise the bar on sales professionalism across the board and hopefully make Austin the epicenter of the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals. So some resources that are available to you, there's a ton. I won't go through them all just in essence of time, but please feel free to follow up with me afterwards. Also, I'll nominate Nimit as well as Judah. Feel free to reach out to our sales. We'll be happy to provide additional information. Just a quick synopsis of what's available. I'll highlight some of the events coming up over the next couple months, but there's certifications available. So if you're building out a sales organization, you've got an existing sales organization, you can, I guess, grow retention, reduce attrition by offering a certification to your inside sales professionals, maybe management team. You can also certify your organization against best practices for hiring, for training, for development. So there's just a wealth of information that you can access. There's lots more. So please don't hesitate reaching out if I can answer any questions or let you know how you can become more involved. Some events coming up. Our next meeting is going to be here at the Capital Factory on November 16th. We have our guest speaker is going to be coming down from Dallas. It's Dr. Howard Dover. He runs the sales program at UT Dallas. So he's going to be sharing some of his takeaways from Dreamforce as well as Sales Connect over the last couple of months. So he's a great speaker, definitely excited for Howard to visit with us. And then our final meeting of the year is going to be December 14th. So no guest speaker, just networking, getting to know each other. Of course, there'll be lots of pizza, and we'll have some beverages too. So definitely a lighter way to finish out the year. A couple of other events coming up. I'm biased, so I'll highlight Frontline Friday. That's a monthly webinar, which I host on behalf of the AISP. Our next one's actually coming up this Friday. So my guest speaker is a local gentleman, Britton Manasco. He recently published his own book with Anna Casilli, Next Era of Selling. So he's going to be sharing some of his insights within the inside sales industry, what he's learned from interviewing sales leaders across the US. So definitely check that out. And we also have an event coming up in a couple of weeks in Las Vegas called Unite. So inside sales leaders, professionals coming from across the globe to celebrate sales and hopefully elevate the profession as a whole. So definitely lots going on. So with that brings us to our guest speaker for this evening. So I'm really excited because we've got one of the industry leaders in delivering virtual sales presentations and also a leader on productivity. So Tom Drews, he's joining us from California. So he's a leading expert on designing and delivering highly engaging sales presentations. Cisco has hired Tom and What Works to train their entire sales force, approximately 65,000 people, on how to deliver effective sales presentations. He's also delivered workshops for Citrix, Intuit, Symantec, as well as Google. And before starting his own company, What Works, Tom was vice president of sales for 2 technology companies out in the West Coast. And I think also a claim to fame, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, you also had a taste of stardom by making some appearances on, was it General Hospital or Days of Our Lives? Oh, both. There we go. So we definitely have a true star in our presence. So with that, I'd love to pass it over to you, Tom, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. We really appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate the warm welcome. And hello, everyone. Welcome to What Works in my presentation. I really appreciate you showing up. I know your time is extremely valuable, so my plan is to make the very most of it. And I absolutely welcome questions, so we'll be fielding questions throughout. We're also recording this. That's good to know, so we'll be sharing the recording with you. And you can go back and watch this on a Friday or Saturday night, whichever works best for you. Okay, great. So I'm going to go ahead and dive in here. Welcome again to 7 strategies for delivering engaging virtual sales presentations. I'm going to turn my camera off so I don't distract you, but I will keep yours on. Presenting in a virtual environment is the wave of the future. In fact, that future has already arrived. It can be an incredibly effective means of communicating our message and our value to our prospects. That said, it means next to nothing if we can't effectively engage them. And it turns out that is the #1 challenge that we face when we're presenting in the virtual environment. How do we get our prospect involved? How do we keep their attention? How do we get their interest? And the second biggest challenge we face is being able to gauge our prospect. Unless everyone has a web camera turned on, then it's really hard to tell what people are up to. And they are free to wander off and do anything they wish. There are plenty of distractions, as you can see here. Just out of curiosity, by a show of hands, please raise your hand if you've ever sat in on a virtual meeting or presentation and wandered off to do something different.
Pretty much everyone, Tom.
There we go. I can see some hands going up. I'm glad to see that. It's very typical. If we can't get the attention of our audience right from the start and hold it throughout, they will wander. I guarantee you they'll wander. And in a worst case scenario, we're gonna put them to sleep. And that is exactly what we want to avoid. So I'm going to be sharing several strategies with you to help you fully engage your prospects and your audiences regardless of how you're presenting moving forward. As you heard, my name is Tom Drews. Just a very brief introduction for how I got into this in the first place. started my business, What Works, back in 2001, teaching in-person presentation skills. And somewhere around 2003, WebEx hired me to train their entire sales and marketing team for how to design and deliver effective in-person presentations, which is kind of unusual considering that they all present virtually. But they saw the need to get out into the field. The interesting thing is several people came up to me afterwards and said, Tom, this is great, but can you teach us how to do this online using WebEx? Now, these are the experts of the world. They're using WebEx to sell their own product, WebEx, and they needed help. So that helped me to realize, you know what, everyone else needs help out there too. So I interviewed the top sales people at WebEx and their clients, and put together a whole bunch of strategies and best practices, and ultimately created a program helping people to design and deliver effective virtual sales presentations. Since then, I've had the opportunity to work with some really wonderful clients, some of which you see here. And I'm all proud to say that I've worked with AAISP almost since its inception. Bob Perkins, your chairman, has hired me to train his company as well. So I've had a lot of experience with working with inside sales. My objective for you all this evening is to have you walk away with something of great value that will help you to effectively engage your prospects when you're presenting online so that you can shorten the sales cycle, beat the competition, and close more business. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So my agenda is very simple. I'll be sharing with you 7 best practices, and I'll be answering questions throughout, and I will also share some valuable resources at the end of our workshop. Some takeaways, I'll share with you a 25-page ebook, 28 best practices, a next steps document, presentation design and delivery process, and there's much more that I have to offer you as well. Before I go any further though, I'd like to find out from you all, what are some of your challenges when you're presenting in the virtual environment? So Gary, if you can help me kind of coordinate this here. Please feel free to raise your hands. What are some of the challenges that you face when you're presenting virtually? Now, this could be using WebEx or GoToMeeting or Zoom or whatever platform it is you're using.
Yeah, I would say when you're presenting particularly to a large crowd, getting the feel of who's really the decision maker and just being able to engage, all the critical people within that group. Particularly when it's virtual, it's a lot harder to get a feel for what the dynamics are within that group.
That's a great point.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you heard that, Tom, but it's really, Judah had mentioned presenting to a large group, identifying who
Right.
is the decision maker and how do we engage the multiple folks that we have online.
Right. Something you'll hear me mention probably at least a couple different times is I think that 90% of a successful presentation is in the preparation. So if you have the opportunity to talk with your prospects ahead of time, find out who are the decision makers, who are the champions, who are the people on the technology side or the purchasing side, so that going into your presentation, you already know who those people are. That's really an ideal scenario.
Awesome.
Any other challenges?
Yeah, we have a couple more. Yes, sir.
Various levels of technology understanding of the audience. So different technology access levels, getting the message across. Could be connections, it could be their computers, it could be their phones, just understanding how to get the message across consistently on different platforms.
Oh, very cool. So that was some feedback we had, how to deliver a consistent message across various or multiple technology platforms. So if folks are engaging via laptops or via smartphones, via desktop computers, so how to have a consistent message and everyone has a consistent experience.
Okay, that's an excellent point. I've delivered, for Cisco alone, I've delivered literally 200 plus training programs for them. And I can say that just about every time I've encountered some kind of a technology issue, it's a challenge nowadays. We constantly have upgrades. We have Microsoft Office 2016. WebEx is constantly upgrading. I spent 2 hours on the phone with GoToWebinar today just trying to get a lay of the land for the new features. So and I'm going to mention this again too, is that we really have to know our platforms. We have to know our technology. Again, 90% of a successful presentation is in the preparation. Okay, let's take one more challenge and then we'll continue on.
James.
So I found people don't tell you, like you've actually broken up a few times, just kind of like static or whatever. People don't tell you. And in fact, they could be missing 10% of your pitch and you would never know. They'll just nod and smile and you just don't get the next meeting. What's your suggestion about that?
So for that one, Tom, did you hear that one, Tom?
I think I heard that. My audio has broken up a couple times.
There you go. I need to do a better job.
You know what, I'm going to circle back to that, but really it comes down to preparation. It's testing. I use 2 computers. In fact, if it's an important presentation, I will use 3 computers just in case one fails. And I will test my audio, I'll test my lighting, my background, everything. It's not always going to fix everything. If I'm cutting out, that's, I think part of a function of presenting to a large group off some TVs or some big monitors. So it's not going to be fail-proof. I wish it was. I'm not sure what else to say about that. Preparation as much as possible.
I definitely thank you for the feedback. But I like the idea of having 2 computers. Yeah. That's really cool.
Oh, I won't present without having 2 computers. If you're in the world of sales, I guarantee it will make an enormous difference. You have to be able to see what everyone else is looking at. So right now I have a second computer and I can look over and make sure my slides are advancing, make sure my video camera's turned on. Otherwise, I'll just get lost. Okay, thank you all for sharing that. That brings me to point number 1, or best practice number 1, and that is to know your platform. Again, we talk about preparation. I'm curious to know what platforms you're using. If you would do me a favor and Gary, help me out on this. By a show of hands, how many of you are using WebEx?
We got 2 folks.
Okay.
2 folks for WebEx.
Okay. How many are using Zoom?
We got 3 folks using Zoom.
Okay, and GoToMeeting?
Yeah, we got vast majority of the room using GoToMeeting.
Okay, great. ClearSlide? Anybody?
No ClearSlide.
Okay, great. Okay, super. That's good enough for me. Yeah, and there's literally hundreds of other platforms to work with. So if you're using one platform, whatever that is, master it. And I figure the best way to learn how to use your platform is to use 2 computers. To log in one computer as the presenter and the other computer as a participant, and then just present back and forth. It's really an ideal way to learn your platform. And there's so many tools. Most people aren't familiar with this, but you have annotation tools, the chat room, polling features, raise your hand, the web camera. All of these are in the platforms that I just mentioned. So we have to practice with all of them. It's not just what are they, it's how can you use them to effectively engage and interact with your audience. And that takes practice. Okay, and also presentation sharing if you're doing a demonstration or something. So I mentioned using 2 computers. The first one logged in as you, the second one logged in as a participant or your prospect. That way you can see what everyone else is up to or what they're looking at, and it's really, really useful. Okay, number 2 is to present genuine value. Now, most of you, if not all of you, have been through multiple sales training programs where we learn how to find out what's important to our prospect. I find it absolutely amazing and baffling to me that the majority of presentations that come across my desk are not focused on what's important for the prospect. It's what the salesperson thinks is most important for the prospect. It's what we know is most important. That is all that matters. The number 1 strategy to engage an audience, whether you're presenting in person or virtually, is to present value based on your prospect's needs. Again, I know this is obvious. I'm stating the obvious, but I want to reiterate this because very few people really practice this. And it's the best way to engage an audience. So we have to do a discovery process. If you are presenting virtually, my recommendation is to get on the phone ahead of time if possible, ask all the right questions, and then schedule a separate follow-up meeting where you can actually present your value. So that way, if you do your discovery process, then you can put together a streamlined, customized presentation focusing specifically on your prospect's most important needs. Again, 90% of a successful sales presentation is in the preparation. So understand your prospect's situation, the problems they face, the impact of those problems on their business, and then ultimately, what are their needs? Some of you might recognize I just used the SPIN formula, but Sandler is a very popular one. All of them are really great with questioning. So that's the first step. Now, if you don't have the opportunity to call ahead of time and learn about your prospect, then at the very least, in the beginning of your virtual sales presentation, open up a slide like this. And before you dive in, just say, hey, you know what, I'd like to take just a few minutes and find out what are some of the challenges you're facing, what would be of greatest value to you. Then you can customize on the fly. Okay, so any way you look at it, we need to know what's important to our prospect. Okay, any questions before I move on to number 3?
I had a question, Tom. Like, whenever you're doing
Yeah.
those almost like mini discoveries, if you've got multiple decision makers and collecting those findings for each individual, would you have a slide at the beginning that summarizes all of those, or how would you present that?
Can you get just a little bit closer to the mic for me?
Oh, for sure. How's that? So whenever
I
you're
think that's fair.
doing maybe multiple decision makers on the phone,
Yeah.
you do your mini discovery beforehand, you collect the findings, what's going to be most relevant to them. How do you typically position that? Do you send an email to all the participants in advance outlining what everyone wants to cover and getting agreement, and in addition presenting that up front as well at the beginning of the presentation?
Good question. You know, it depends so much on the sales situation. Is it a small transactional sale? Is it a large sale? You know, a $2 million sale where it's going to take 6 months or a year to close? I always like to find a champion, if possible, whoever's behind this, who can help me navigate the decision makers. If I don't have a champion, you know, it's whoever I'm in touch with. I just like to come right out and ask who all is involved in the sales process. And if you ask that question, oftentimes they'll say, okay, well, we need to get Jim involved for marketing. We're also going to need to get our IT manager who's going to be using the software, and then maybe our CFO. So if we ask all the right questions, then we can find out who do we need to have involved. And in an ideal world, you'll be able to get on the phone with each of them for 15, 20 minutes and do a mini discovery process. Then when you're presenting virtually, as you're going through your value presentation and your demonstration, if that's the case, then you can call on those people specifically and say, Sherry, you mentioned that return on investment was especially important to you. Have I addressed that concept there? So again, preparation. I can't emphasize that enough. Do as much groundwork as possible ahead of time.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks for the question.
No worries. Any other questions or thoughts?
If you don't mind, I'll continue on here. I want to make sure I get through the material, but I will continue to field questions, so please hold on to those for me.
No worries. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, great. So number 3 is have a structure for your presentation. I put together what I call the What Works Fishbone template. I've been using this since 2001. All of my clients use this, and it's very, very effective, I believe. Now, I don't have time to go through the entire template right now, so I won't, but I do want to cover at least a couple of the most important relevant points. And by the way, I should mention the ebook that I'll be sharing with you actually walks you through this entire template, just in case you're interested. So my first question for you all is, when you see other people's presentations, please raise your hand if most of them start with an agenda. If most of those presentations start with an agenda, raise your hand.
We got about 6 or 7 folks raise their hand.
I'm surprised. Normally I see a lot more people raise their hands. Most people do start with an agenda. An agenda is absolutely essential. However, it's boring to start with an agenda. what I recommend is that we start with a grabber opening, something to get the attention of our audience right from the start. This could be a quote, a fact, a statistic, a testimonial, a provocative statement. My favorite grabber opening is to start off with the number one challenge that I know my prospect is facing, and then tell a brief story for how I solved that for someone else. So it gets them in touch emotionally with their pain, and it also gives them a third-party customer testimonial saying, hey, you know what, this worked for us too. So if in doubt, always start with what's the challenge that your prospect is facing. Okay? Just as most people start with an agenda, most people end on questions, which again is boring, and it's also a little bit dangerous. So what I like to do is, as I get to the end of my presentation, say before I close, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you might have. The purpose of this is to say, hey, I'm not done yet, so don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. Also, it's letting people know, hey, this is your last chance to ask any questions. And typically, this is where final objections will arise too. So it's an opportunity to handle objections. And by the way, one of my favorite ways to handle objections is to use customer success stories. So if eBay, for instance, has a challenge with a certain kind of technology, then I might say, you know, it's interesting, Google had the exact same situation, and here's how we solved that problem for them. So again, that's a great way to handle objections. So ultimately, we want to close with a grabber. Get their attention right from the start, and then leave them with a message they won't forget. People remember the first thing you say and the last thing you say. That's what matters. The other thing I want to add about this template, or any presentation for that matter, is that we want to weave in value throughout. So if you've done your discovery process and you understand your prospect's most important challenges, then you're going to find those 3 key value points. 3 key value points, and weave those in throughout. That's what's missing from most presentations. When I was working with WebEx, one of their salespeople actually used this template and closed their biggest deal in history. And the interesting thing is they never even delivered a demo. It was strictly a value-based presentation. So value is what sells our prospects. Now, what you can do once you have filled out that fishbone template is you can create a PowerPoint template using your branding, artwork, and logos. This is an example of what we did with Cisco. And then all you have to do is enter your information and cut and paste your slides in. Once you've put together one presentation, every presentation after that is so much simpler. Such an easy process to design presentations. Okay, and as I mentioned, I'll be sharing a 25-page ebook with you that actually walks you through this template, just in case that's of interest. And that brings me to number 4, strategy number 4, which is to keep it simple. First of all, Gary, I'll field at least one question. Does anyone have a question for me?
Questions out there?
I have
Got one? Yeah.
So I see you're doing it at least through part of the presentation, but I was just like introduced to the idea of actually having the webcam up on yourself as you do a presentation. Do you do that consistently, and kind of what are the thoughts in both ways?
Excellent question. So, you know, it's entirely up to you, but here's my thought on this. I want my audience, my prospect, to focus on my message, on my content. So I'll use the web camera when I introduce myself, or when I stop to field questions, or when I'm elaborating on a slide, or if I don't feel like I'm going to be distracting my audience. So I will turn the camera off and then turn it on again. It creates more impact that way as well. But if it's on all the time, that can be a distraction. So I like to use it intermittently.
Makes sense. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, great question. Great question. In fact, I will turn my camera off now. Okay, number 4
Oh,
is
Tom,
to keep...
sorry, Tom, you had one more question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
For larger group,
Yep.
for larger group webinars, I'd be concerned about having the questions and that there might be some drop off before I get to my sort of final impact
presentation elements. So do you have strategies, or do you find that not to be the case, going through Q&A before the conclusion?
Great questions, you guys. You recall when I was walking you through that template. In fact, let me just go backwards if I can here. Actually, remember the fishbone template, and I was mentioning how it's important to weave in value throughout. So if you are weaving value in throughout, it doesn't matter when they leave. You know, in your grab for opening, and you've got a credibility statement up front that talks about your clients and your customers and your success strategies and how everything's worked so awesome. If you wait until the very end of your presentation for an impactful statement, then you've really missed the boat. So it's super important. Remember those 3 value points. That is what people buy on, those 3 most important value points. And if you have 3 different decision makers, then find out what are those 3 value points for each of those decision makers. And then you can weave those into your presentation. So that's my strategy for dealing with that kind of a situation. Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Great questions. Okay, so how long would it take you to read this next slide? Just an estimate. Raise your hand if it would be 1 to 3 minutes, somewhere in that range.
0, I wouldn't read it.
Couple people.
Yeah.
A few forevers.
I see a lot of hands going up in the air in there. So here's the problem.
Oh, Tom, we lost your
We're
slides
actually,
there.
what's that?
We lost your slides. Let me just...
You lost my slides.
Oh, there we go. We're back. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So here's the reality. We are naturally designed as human beings to read what's in front of us. So if someone puts information in front of you, there's a really good chance you're going to start reading it. In fact, your audience will start reading it too. We can only physically have one thought at a time. So you are not physically able to read and listen to me at the same time. You're gonna have to go back and forth, and that's a distraction. And unfortunately, the vast majority of presentations that I see have way too much information on their slides. That's a problem. It's a distraction. In fact, let's just do a little experiment here. I'd like for you all to start reading what's on the slide. Okay, on the count of 3, start reading. And what I'm going to do is start talking as though I were presenting to this slide. And let's just see how easy it is for you to absorb this information. Okay, go ahead and start reading. So here's one of the things that I love about panthers. I was in the woods once, and I was tracking down an antelope, and oh my God, this panther jumped right out of a tree, completely startled me. And but it's not just the panthers; it's the lions, it's the tigers. It's there's so many animals out in the forest that we have to deal with. Okay, now raise your hand if you found it challenging to understand either me or what you were reading.
You got the majority, almost there. Everyone in the room,
Okay.
Tom.
Excellent. That is my point right there. Go back when you have the time. Go back and look at your presentations and ask yourself: does it take me longer than 4 or 5 seconds to read what's on the slide? If it takes more than that, it's too much information. I promise you'll be losing your prospect. As I mentioned, we are not able to listen and read at the same time. So here's 3 great options for you. Number 1 is to use annotation tools or build-in call-outs such as arrows. 2 is to use a build, so you're bringing in one part at a time. 3 is to break each point into separate slides. So here's a really, really simple example. Back to this original slide right here. And this is a call-out. So if I'm talking to this slide, at the very least, you'll know where I'm referencing. What is it that I'm pointing to, so that you can focus on that area rather than wandering off and trying to figure out what it is that I'm talking to. So the second option is to use a build, where you bring in one point at a time. So first of all, let's break this into several parts, simplify the text, and now bring in one point at a time. Speak to that point, then bring in the next point, speak to that point, bring in the next one, and so on. That way our audience is not reading ahead. Really, really important. Also, you'll notice that I added an interesting photo to help illustrate my point. And lastly is you'll notice that I'm graying out the bullet points as I go because I want to focus my audience on the most important point, what I'm referencing right then. Okay, so that's the second option. Number 3 is to break them into separate slides. So you might take each of these points and break them into their own slides and then add an interesting photo or visual to help illustrate that point. Our goal is to avoid death by PowerPoint. Steve Jobs left behind what I would consider to be a legacy of presentation mastery. People have actually written books based on his presentation style. In fact, if any of you or all of you are genuinely serious about presenting, moving forward, absolutely pick up a copy of this book. I mean, was one of the greatest presenters in the world, and there's so much to learn. So here are some examples from one of his latest presentations. And you'll notice that you won't find more than 4 or 5 words on any of these slides. This allowed him to draw attention specifically to what he wanted the audience to focus on. I would much rather you have 6 very simple slides than 1 really complex slide. Here's another way to look at this. This is a very tall sandwich. And it's going to be difficult to take a bite out of this. If you serve this in a restaurant, no one is going to be able to take a bite out of it unless they maybe break it up into smaller parts, which is what I suggest. If you take a really busy slide, break it into 5 separate slides, 5 smaller sandwiches, then you can take a bite out of it. So just a simple little analogy there. Here's a real life example. This is from Cisco, one of their slides I grabbed from the internet a long time ago. And just out of curiosity, what is wrong with this slide? Please raise your hand if anyone can tell me what's wrong with this slide, based on what we just learned.
James?
Way too much information.
Way too much information.
Yes, thank you. That's a very simple answer, and that's really all I'm looking for. It's too much information. It's going to be a distraction for our audience. So now, who can tell me what can we do differently? I just shared 3 different options. Please raise your hand if you can tell me what can we do differently here.
Oh, sir.
Break it into individual parts,
Yeah, great.
4 separate slides.
Yeah, break it up into individual parts, like 4 separate slides.
Okay, great. 4 separate slides. What's another option?
Call outs, annotations.
Call outs, annotations.
Perfect. Excellent. And the third option?
Build out.
Build it out.
Use a build. Awesome. So anytime we're doing this, just remember, keep the information simple. Add some photos and visuals where possible. And remember, people aren't going to be able to take a bite out of a huge sandwich. Okay, so here's what we did to this. We broke that into 5 slides. Here's the title slide. Here's point number 1. You'll notice that we added some photos here to illustrate our points. And there's still a little bit too much text here. Literally, if I am going to be talking and you're reading this, it's still a distraction. We have to keep it simple. Okay, that brings me to number 5, which is to add some Hollywood. Now, I actually spent some time in Hollywood as an actor, as you heard. And I'm curious, just by a show of hands, please raise your hand if you recognize me from TV and film.
We got everyone, Tom.
Thank you very much. If the reality is, if you were to string together all of my parts from TV and film, I'd be lucky if they formed a complete sentence. Now, I did go on the dating game show, so if you would like a little extra entertainment on a separate time, just type in Tom Drews in YouTube, and you'll find some entertaining video clips. So I did learn some valuable lessons from being in Hollywood. An Academy Award-winning film is literally thousands of images strung together to tell a story. It takes us on an emotional roller coaster ride, rich with characters and dialogue, gets us emotionally involved, as I said, and ultimately it leaves us with a message that we're not likely to forget. We can do something similar with our presentations. Rather than designing a dull, boring PowerPoint presentation loaded with text, think about how you can tell a story visually and have characters and dialogue, get people emotionally involved. People remember what they see. This is really important. People remember what they see. There was a study in a book called Brain Rules. It said that text and pictures together are 65% more effective than text alone. So again, go back and look at your presentations and ask yourself, do I have any photos? Is there anything here that's helping to enhance my presentation? 65%. If half of your sale is presenting your value, just imagine adding 65% of effectiveness to that. It's also worth noting that we process images 60,000 times faster than we do text. Okay, so clearly I am emphasizing the value of adding photos. And by the way, listening and looking at pictures takes up 2 different parts of our brain. That's why this works. Okay, here is probably the final most important point when it comes to Hollywood, and that is people remember what they feel. Maya Angelou once said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. When it comes to sales, there's absolutely no question if we can get our prospects emotionally involved, then they will be engaged, and that's what we want. As I mentioned before, when it comes to structuring our presentation, don't start with an agenda. Start with a grabber opening, something that gets them emotionally involved. That's why I suggest starting out with the number one challenge problem that your prospect is facing. That will get their attention. And then right away switch to here's how I'm going to solve that problem for you. Okay? And if you're wondering about where you can find some photos, I personally use Think Stock Photo. I don't recommend using Google Images. There's trademark issues and copyright issues. There's tons of others. There's Shutterstock and iStock Photo and just a whole bunch, but I recommend this one. Okay, any questions? I'll take one question before I move on. Again, I want to make sure we stay on track if anyone has a question.
Yes, we do.
About the example of Cisco, like at the beginning, well, yeah, there was a lot of information, but I want to hear your thoughts about dark background and light background, because at the beginning it was like a lot of information, but it was dark, and when you split it, it was white. So is there like any suggestion about should it be dark or should it be white?
Oh, good question. Thank you.
Okay, Gary, can you help me decipher that? I was not able to hear it.
No worries. So it's really a question around aesthetics of the slide. So going back to the Cisco example that we reviewed, there's a difference between, it was a dark background, and then also you've leveraged light backgrounds as well. So do you have like any feedback or guidance around leveraging the color of background?
Great point. Normally I would bring that up, especially since we're in the virtual environment. We want to be able to annotate, and programs like GoToMeeting and WebEx and Zoom, they all offer annotation tools. So you want to have a white background if you're going to have information on a slide. Now clearly I have a black background here, but this is an agenda point slide. So if it's a really simple slide, I'll use a black background, but ideally you do want to have a light background. So that would be my suggestion.
I do have one tip.
Okay.
Oh, we got one tip. Sorry.
Great.
Sorry, Tom. Just 1 second. We got one comment in the room.
So when you're building a presentation, I found a lot of success with, like, when you think you're done, basically sleep on it, and then the next day the only thing you're allowed to do is delete words. So like literally just go through the whole presentation like you never saw it before and only delete things, and you'll find like 30 to 40% of the words just disappear because you didn't really need them. But your creative process, when you're trying to put your thought down, you fill in gaps in your thinking with extra words. So just something that works really well.
That's a great point.
Yeah, excellent point. I like to build it up as much as possible. You know, add everything I can think of, and then like you said, I will sleep on it, go back, and the next day I'll just start deleting, and I'll actually copy that first slide deck, and then with the second slide deck I'll start deleting, so at least I have a backup. But yeah, great point. Okay, excellent. Deliver dynamically is number 6. When we're presenting virtually, really all we have to work with is what people see and what they hear. So that's what you see on the computer screen and what you hear. So it's our voice, it's our audio. Absolutely essential that we make the most of our voice. And here are the different elements that go into our voice. Actually, first I want to illustrate something. You see this woman here is engaging this audience with eye communication and facial expressions, gestures, and her body. She can move around and everyone's looking at her. Much more engaging than just looking at a computer screen. And the same thing with our voice. When we take her away, this is what we're left with. So we really have to make the most of these different elements. Now, I do a lot of presenting and work with international clients. And for Cisco, for instance, I deliver workshops for Asia Pac and Europe. And there's a lot of language barriers. There's a lot of accents. So be conscious of who your audience is and where are they located. If they're in a foreign country or they have an accent, then it's really important that we slow down and articulate clearly. Most importantly, when it comes to presenting, giving a sales pitch, is enthusiasm. We need to be enthusiastic about our product or services because enthusiasm is contagious. So make the most of our voice. I do not recommend using a cell phone if you're presenting. If this is any kind of an important presentation, don't use a cell phone. I actually don't recommend using a speakerphone either. It's kind of like you all are on speakerphone right now. So when you're talking, I have a hard time understanding you. So it's the same thing if you're in a conference room and you're giving a presentation. The best way is to use a headset connected to a phone line or a computer. Without a question, headset connected to a phone line or a computer. Mine are very simple, actually. I think this headset I got several years ago for, I think, $70, and it does the job. When I use a phone headset, I think I got one at Radio Shack. It's Plantronics for probably $30. I have 5 of them because every so often they die and I have a backup. The best way to know how you sound is to record yourself. If you have GoToMeeting or Zoom or WebEx or ClearSlide or BlueJeans or whatever it is you're using, record yourself, even for 10 minutes, and play it back and see how you sound. Even better, though, is to partner up with a fellow salesperson or a colleague or a friend and present back and forth and give yourselves honest feedback. That is going to be the best strategy. Okay, I want to make sure that we end on time. How much time do I have left, Gary, for my part?
We got about 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'll hold questions till the end, assuming we have any time. I want to get to number 7 here, and this is my final point, which is to interact often. And one of the best strategies, clearly, is to use live video. Some best practices: use it intermittently, as I mentioned before. Have good lighting. Start your meeting early so that you can get all this set up. Have a professional background, dress appropriately, and have good eye communication. By that, what I mean is to actually look into the camera. Most people look down at themselves on the screen or at their panel or something, so we want to look into the camera. That's going to give us the best connection with our audience. Use the annotation tools. Most of these platforms that we're talking about have annotation tools, which are highlighter tools and arrows and pointers. Some of them have a raise your hand feature where you can ask a question, raise your hand. The chat room, this is not just for sending messages back and forth. If you have a slightly larger group, what I like to do is ask a question and have people type their response into the chat room and then read those responses back. It's very interactive. It's kind of like having a conversation with your audience. You might use a polling feature. So lots of different strategies. The number 1 strategy, by the way, and this is when I interviewed the top salespeople at WebEx. The number 1 salesperson at WebEx, I said, what's your strategy for engaging your prospects? Does anyone want to take a guess at what that was? Just a wild guess? Raise your hand if you feel strongly about this.
Any thoughts?
Anybody?
Ask them
No?
questions.
Okay. So the number one strategy is to ask questions. Good one. The number one strategy is to address people by their first name. Do it in the beginning of your presentation. And what you'll find is that your audience, they will be thinking to themselves, oh gosh, I better pay attention because he's going to be calling on me. Or she'll be calling on me, whatever. You just want to make sure that you have relevant questions when you do this. And if you've done your discovery process, then as you go through your presentation, it'll be really easy for you to stop and say, hey Jerry, you had mentioned that downtime is a really big issue for you. So now you're asking relevant questions and calling on people. Okay, we've got just a few minutes left here, and I want to make sure that you all know how you can find the resources. So if you write this down, whatworks.biz/resources/OCT19. This will take you to my website. There's a page there where you can download all of these different documents, and you can also learn more about our workshops if that's of interest. So whatworks.biz/resources, it's all case sensitive. If you would like to learn more about what we do, if it's something that we can help your sales organization with, please feel free to take a look at whatworks.biz, and there's also some great resources that you'll find there as well. I should mention also, Gary, this is one of your suggestions too. We also deliver sales productivity workshops. If we had another 45 minutes, I would absolutely love to walk you through this workshop. WebEx hired us to deliver this program as well. So we help salespeople to get really clear on what their priority activities are, free up time, and significantly increase sales. So those are some thoughts for you. You're welcome to email me at tom@whatworks.biz if you have any questions or if you just want to get in touch for any reason whatsoever. And a quick summary. Number one is to know your platform. Regardless of what platform it is, log into computers, find a friend or a partner, practice back and forth. That's going to be the best way to learn your platform. Number two is to present genuine value. Not just any value though, not what you think is most important for your prospect, it's what you know is most important. Every buyer is going to have different ideas of what's important to them. So do a discovery process. Then you can custom design a streamlined presentation focusing specifically on their most important needs. So have a structure. Keep it simple. Remember this. If there's too much information on a slide, it's going to confuse people. They aren't going to get your message as well as they could. Remember that tall sandwich the next time you look at your slides. Add some Hollywood, photos, visuals, graphics, multimedia. Tell some stories. Get people emotionally engaged. Number 6, deliver dynamically. Make the most of your voice. And number 7 is interact often. I recommend interacting at least every 2, 3, 4 minutes on a regular basis, whether it's using the annotation tools or the chat room or just calling on people by their first name. Okay, now I know we're just about out of time here. I'd like to spend, Gary, if it's okay with you, just a couple minutes finding out what's one thing that really caught your attention that will have, not you specifically, Gary, but the audience here, what would have a great impact on, what did you learn that would have a great impact on your presentations moving forward? I'd love to hear from just a handful of you. If you're willing to share, please raise your hand. What really got your attention? What's something that you commit to practicing moving forward?
Is that Cameron?
Yeah, I think the fishbone structure is pretty cool. I like that approach. Starting off with something, talk about it, and then talk about your agenda, finish off with questions, and then just asking questions before the end of it and wrapping up. I thought that was pretty good.
Awesome, thanks, Cameron. Cameron had some good feedback around the fishbone structure, Tom, and how to really.
I heard that.
Oh, okay, cool.
Excellent, thank you.
Judah, you had one?
Yeah, I would say the similar point. Not starting with agenda, not ending with questions, but using an attention grabber to get them emotionally involved.
Great.
Yeah.
Think creatively. I mean, this is your presentation. You can do what you want with it. I don't recommend using a corporate slide deck. Create a sales presentation. Create a value-based sales presentation where you get their attention right from the start. Okay, anybody else?
Any other thoughts?
I like the two computers idea and having backup systems. Pretty much everyone I sit in on is a little bit of a
Okay,
train wreck.
great. Yeah, and emphasize, if you're in the world of sales, you will be making enough money to spend $400 or $500 to get a second computer, unless your company's going to pay for it. I absolutely can assure you it will help to build your sales. Okay, we'll take one more. If there is one more there, would anyone like to share?
My key takeaway, Tom, is about the mini discovery. So if you've got multiple decision makers, is having those calls up front, almost like subsets of the main discovery, figuring out what's most important, and then leveraging that to build your value statements. I love that idea of mini discoveries.
Great. Thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that I think we're probably a couple minutes over here. So I'm going to do a quick close here. You may recall in the very beginning I mentioned presenting online is the wave of the future. I would go as far as to say that presenting online can be more effective than meeting in person if you do it really well, if you know how to do it. It's convenient. You can present from anywhere in the world. You can reach a much larger audience. It's cost effective. You don't have to travel, so you'll save an enormous amount of time. And there's just a lot of features that can help you interact with your audience. But it means nothing if we're going to put our prospect to sleep. So I encourage you to take advantage of some of these best practices. Based on my experience, if you practice even half of what we covered, you'll be in the top 5% of presenters. That'll give you a huge leg up on your competition. Okay, so those are my thoughts there. It's been an enormous pleasure working with you all and presenting for you. And Gary, with that, I'll hand it off to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tom. I really appreciate you taking the time. You did an awesome job, so thank you. Big appreciation. Thank you again, Tom.
You're welcome, and thank you all. Thank you all very much. Again, feel free to be in touch. Have a great rest of your evening, and I hope you enjoy the debates tonight.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you everyone for taking the time to attend. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, quick question. How do we get a copy of this video? You said it's.
Oh yeah, I can send it out. So if anyone would like a copy, please just drop your email address or business card, and I'll be happy to forward that out. So we're live streaming as well through Capital Factory, and then I'll also have the recording of the go-to meeting. So I'll be happy to share it with anyone that would like that. But yeah, just let me know. I'll shoot that over right away. But thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Great to meet you all. Thank you for spending the last 5,400 seconds, or almost 5,400 seconds with us. I really value it. It means a lot to me. And any questions at all, don't hesitate reaching out. And please feel free to, we've got this room through till about 8 o'clock, so feel free to grab some pizza, get to meet each other. And I look forward to seeing you in future meetings. So thank you again. Have a great rest of the evening. Bye-bye.
She said all those technology accessories.
Gary, that was great.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I'd love to get a copy of it.
Yeah, just reply. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So good to meet you.
Good meeting you. So I'm flying back to Chicago Friday morning. Do you happen to be around tomorrow?
I'm training all day tomorrow. I guess I'll work Friday morning. But are you, when are you back in town again?
I don't know, maybe in a couple of weeks.
Let's set up some time.
Let's pick your brain about something.
Most definitely. Yeah, I'll shoot you an email. Let's schedule some time to get back in town.
All right, thanks.
Take care.
Oh, sorry. I got it.
Thank you, sir. No worries.
Great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming down.
Of course, I'll see you next time.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to it. Take care, Mike.
I'm Jonathan.
Jonathan. That's really cool.
I'll give credit to God. In fact, I just wanted to get out this week.
Oh, cool.
I just thought about my business development.
Oh, okay.
Some of these things are more techie, more startups. I'm very excited to hear about this one. I'm like, I bet I can learn a lot.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Even this, when you're going over each presentation,
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's just same type of messaging. You can translate it in person as well. I like that.
Who do you work with?
I started. I was with Oracle for about 10 years. About a year ago, I started my company. So I led the Oracle Sales and Business Development Organization. So this was what I did there. Now my own delivery tech organization.
stage for us. Very small.
Yeah.
Are you based here in Austin?
Yeah. So I started out just over a year ago.
Last sales
And there's an adjustment coming from the machine or an Oracle. What are you working on right now?
I'm just doing something new. I would assume big city sold probably. I would assume there's a lot of them.
That was good.
It's been, last year's been great. I've learned a lot.
Bigger, but
It's been cool working with growing organizations. It's nice to come getting funding and have their
more effective.
check out my Oracle background. It's just been
Yeah.
Yeah.
but here's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Oh, captivate.
Yeah, I got to do that sure.
So,
we
still
kind enough to
very close to beta. And it's for APIs, we have to assess them for insurance companies and financial institutions.
But it's awesome. Thank you so much, Jonathan. If I could ever help,
Lots of
that's the
Okay.
And we'll be meeting again here next month too. We'll have an in-person Awesome. Thanks a lot.
I just want to give him an email.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We do it at,
Oh, I can give you a card.
Oh, are you for the?
Yeah, I'll be happy to forward the presentation.
yeah.
I can send you an email by tomorrow, Brandon.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Latest.
Awesome.
I don't have my card with me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
All right, thanks. Okay.
Let me give you one of my cards, Jeff.
Okay.
Thanks for coming out, Karen.
Yeah, thank
It's great
you.
to meet you.
It's really
A lot of that.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Take care. Thank you.
It's good. Yeah, you too.
Thank you so much for coming.
You can send us
Yeah, we'll forward it. Oh, thank you so much. Different competitor and awesome.
They're here with the wildlife.
Oh, okay.
I met a guy in Kansas City. Talking with
So
him.
cool. How long are you here for?
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Yeah, I
Cool.
met a guy
And
in
are you
Kansas City.
starting or near the end?
Yeah.
That's your next year in capital factory?
Yeah, one of us
What do
is
you do?
here.
So I'm working with a company now called
Yeah, his father was here.
and we do
Okay.
enrollment mostly financial for college.
Oh, okay.
Title
Oh, that is so cool.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
it was
I'll
very
forward an
interesting.
email on it. If you guys have any questions, like, don't hesitate
So
reaching out.
it's
Happy to try and help.
Upgrading.
It's great to meet you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Have a good evening.
So.
It's like,
Good
it's
trade.
cheap.
Take my time.
Like long, but luckily the webcam can't pick me up.
I say like 50% of that.
Oh, for sure.
It's unbelievable. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, once there's some technology,
Much more fade, you know,
Disastrous.
yeah, physics lecture.
So who's your buyer?
Yeah, I looked you up on YouTube.
So,
I found that
yeah, so
one, you have one video, it's the thing.
Oh, yeah, just my one only.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna be posting you.
I think it's in part 1 too. Is there, I was gonna ask you, is there a part 2? Is
Yeah,
there?
you're gonna do a series.
I mean, at 10 seconds,
It was flow management, I
it's like,
think, which is really important.
So I'm gonna do,
who
like,
would you
goal is how to do that.
I sold solar energy, I sold holographic imaging, defense systems.
Oh, really?
You name it. Yeah, I sold.
Okay.
So like, it's an interesting experience. Yeah, I'm doing well. But it's very fun. Like personality. Like,
Yeah, I should, I went out there Friday and Tuesday deals, it's web-based, right?
Yeah, it's one time this Friday.
He's kind of kidding. Unit for business. But like you sell public sector and they're like entirely
Yeah, you
wrong.
mentioned that.
They do a couple of
Oh, it's totally
They're like,
screwed.
don't you know, they're not interested in profit, they're not interested in
Thing
for me,
they're
I'm
not
just trying to
interested in
figure out, like, so they-
because they have no reason to feel like they're gonna get fired for all the
And you'll have I imagine you have a lot of, I remember out of a lot of prospecting firms, they have nothing to do. They basically like,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
paid to be busy,
Yeah.
right? They're not paid to be effective, they're paid to be occupied.
Yeah, and it's like you want to kind of like grab it. Do you have another card? You know, like at least I'm even in there. It can say
No,
like no, you know,
I didn't realize that. You may have mentioned that. I
decades.
forgot.
But at the same time, you know, once you get So like once you get traction, and again, it's, you know, they like to make decisions on well who else is there. But once you get
They all want to be followed.
yeah, but once you get
Personally,
that,
I'm
you get
interested
big
in,
names in that market.
I'm gonna get some
I mean, you
better
can get
mechanics. I'm
and
trying to
there's
set
so
my
much
own
money in
Salesforce
there,
order right
you know,
now, and
since
it's
they're
a
not
challenge.
really
I'm not
careful
much of an
with
admin.
you can, you know, once
A lot of
once you
trust
get
in
in, you can, yeah,
and
it's a
trying
huge
to
cash cow.
get better at
How you been doing?
functional.
Probably
instances,
a year
right?
now.
It's always kind of just
About
like.
a year.
Last thing you were saying is challenges.
Oh yeah.
Are you putting the 31% senior quota?
Yeah.
Oh, you've never used Salesforce?
It's crazy. I mean, it's like
Just
I've been at
Oracle,
startups.
obviously,
This is
yeah.
That's all I'm
Yeah.
but it's also like the whole industry.
Well,
really
it's
gets-
what enterprise uses,
I heard a
so.
lot about everyone.
It's not like regular.
Oh, you guys should be using Salesforce. Hey,
This
thank you so much
this
for
lack
coming.
of a business mind.
I don't
Yeah.
want to Anyway, nice to see you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks very much.
If you
Well,
work
thank
for
you
a
so much for
contractor
coming.
going for Boeing,
I really
you're gonna
appreciate
see
it.
the same thing.
It's
Yeah. Oh, I've sold in I've sold into Boeing, I've sold into KBR,
Yeah.
I've sold into NASA.
Yeah.
Like I've sold into those big guys, and then I'm on the board of an education institution.
Yeah.
So I see
on your own,
different
but it's
workers
nice to
down
see
here,
like.
a bunch of people in the third
Yeah,
sector.
yeah, exactly.
It's like
I
don't care how much money we have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we like the board sits in grills like
Makes it a lot
at a meeting
easier.
3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you
brought in admissions
I'll
came
be,
in,
if you want the
presented.
present recording, I'll be happy to send it.
Yeah.
Tom, I'm sure will be happy to.
You're the
You'll have the
AIC?
recording as well.
No, I'm on the
Oh, well,
I'm on one of the boards
make it.
at
Thank you
business
again
school
for
at TCU.
participating.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And we have one of these
So,
once a month.
I was up for a semi-annual
like,
board meeting.
Next
Yeah.
one,
Admissions came in.
19th, I think the 19th.
So this is our numbers, this is really how we're good, and this, that, and the other, and like, it's all like business
So I
leaders,
host
and we just
that
start like,
for the IASP global membership.
he literally, he's like,
a
so,
webinar
I was
every
funny,
third Friday
the
of
kid,
month.
the guy that was presenting
So there's one
was in my
coming out this
graduate
Friday.
class, and he just
So it's gonna
went to work
be
for the school.
just half an hour.
And he's like, so I know who I'm talking to, and so I've only brought 4 slides, because I know
more
you're gonna
conversation with the
ask
local
1,000
sales officer.
questions,
He just published
and
a
grill
book
me,
on
so you're
sales
on the slides, and this is go. And literally, like, we just like
sales
held them
leaders,
for an
so,
hour.
and then there's
What's
another
happening
training
this?
Tuesday,
What's happening this? What's happening
which is
here?
the second Tuesday of every month.
And it was hilarious. But because a
Yeah,
lot
but
of
it's
it-
like if they're not
kind of training
doing what they're supposed to, it's not like they're not gonna get fired.
No, but the thing I'll say,
So,
right,
like,
is
watch
that
how to use
being
your
that
words,
we're a private institution,
Yeah.
like,
So that was, so it kind of feeds into what we talked
Yeah.
about.
I've been
presenting, but
really
presenting more
impressed,
leveraging
Yeah.
humor to
and
engage the
with, like
audience.
the level of
They
attention.
happen every month.
No.
I'll be happy to, their
Like,
information is on
other
the
people
ASP
there for
website,
sure.
or I'll be happy to share it.
Yeah, but you know what I'd say,
Uh,
like, that
just
guy's
let me
probably,
know.
how long has he been doing it?
10 years.
Yeah, there's so much
Okay.
going on.
But I
We
mean,
do
there's like,
meetings
there's
once
a
a month.
younger generation coming in.
Yeah, he's
And, like,
he's 32.
But like, I
right?
mean, eventually they're gonna get
It's a
like,
pretty
they'll
cool
get
org.
burned down. They'll be like, well,
Do you
why
have a
am I
card
putting
or
all this
your
time?
email
Oh, yeah,
address?
let me give you-
I can send
And
you
that's
the
what it is.
details.
It's just, it's the whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you
But-
okay?
Yeah.
There's good, bad in it, for sure. But it's fun. It's an interesting space, man.
Yeah, it is.
What were you selling before?
I was at a
Thank you so much.
startup
Thank you.
called Fantasy Sales Team, and we were doing sales.
Yeah, so I'll shoot you a note just with the details. The webinar on Fridays at 12, so 12 to 12:30.
Really?
Okay.
So it's using a different platform, Zoom, so it's pretty